All right. Let's did. Second. All right, let's get started. It is 7. Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 10th. Reminder, please turn off your microphone if you are not talking. And I'm just going to start with a couple of announcements first. Pretty much two. The first announcement is with immigration physicals. If you guys follow up on labs with immigration physicals, do me a favor, and if a patient, like if the varicella titers are low or have things like that, instead of just saying that, it's more helpful to the MA if you just put in there patient needs varicella vaccine, patient needs MMR vaccine, that kind of thing. And same thing goes for QuantiFERON. If it's positive, don't just write QuantiFERON positive, write patient needs chest x-ray. Okay. So just do me a favor and put that. It'll just be, because you just kind of have to spell things out a lot of times with the MAs. Second announcement is there is that summer barbecue at the Kerman's Place this coming Saturday. So there is an invite, I think, in email and also in your emails and also on the chat for that. And I think it's called Sensational Summer Barbecue. But yeah, that's this Saturday at the Kerman's. So heads up. And then in general, if you guys have any ideas for Tuesday calls, anything you're really passionate about, anything you're really good at, just please let me know, and we could definitely schedule you for like a Tuesday call, just like Brian did last week and Callie is doing right now. Okay, that's it. So Callie's up next. I don't know if you caught this, Callie, but provider services asked me what you're talking about, and I joked that it was sorcery. And that was like a month ago, and so they were like, okay, and then they just like wrote an email with this invite that says Callie presents sorcery. I just got a kick out of that, and I like had a quick change it to holistic medicine.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, Callie's going to talk about holistic medicine, and you can go and get started.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? You were cutting out a little bit, Z, so I didn't know if it was my connection.
No, I can hear you just
Okay.
fine.
Okay, y'all. I'm really excited to be here and do this. My name is Callie, for those of you I haven't met. I've been here about 5 years. For those of you that know me, you're probably not going to be surprised by this talk. I'm super passionate about stuff like this. I have a disclaimer, and that is that I am getting Reiki certified on the side. So I'm into energy work and chakras and all of this. So this is sort of my perspective. And leading kind of from the heart with medicine, sort of like a spiritual energy perspective. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt, but this is a lot of my experience that I wanted to share. Okay, so this first slide I titled It's All in Our Perspective. So just a little bit of a backstory. About a year ago, I actually did want to quit. I was very exhausted. I was depleted. I just thought patients needed medicine. I didn't feel like I was really making a difference. I started to have doubts, and I just sort of had this like diminishing satisfaction in my job. And about like 8 months ago or to a year, I follow this teacher, and he sort of challenged me in this way of looking at my belief systems and challenged the way that I see things to shift my perspective. And it's this idea that like whatever I believe is true. Like our subconscious mind looks for evidence to make this true. Like if I believe a patient is annoying me and driving me crazy, I will experience that reality in my body. And it's this idea too that like if I believe my job is awful, I will literally experience it that way. And you can extend this even beyond. If I believe like President Trump ruins my life, I will literally attract evidence to that in my life and feel that as if it's true. So I started to kind of shift into this idea, what if I actually believe my job is interesting? Or what if it's an opportunity to grow in my patience, in my spiritual practice? I'll actually experience it that way. So I had a patient that came to Leedsdale. This was like right before I left for my sabbatical for my wedding. And he came in thinking he had a demon in his foot. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, here we go. This patient's like schizophrenic. I do not want to deal with this right now. Anyways, I was a little bit like not wanting this. So I walked into the room. Of course, I dealt with it like medically. Let's make sure your labs are okay. Psychologically, let's get you connected into psych, bridge you with some meds. And then he starts looping about this energy in his foot that's a demon. And he's like crying in room 6 at Leetsdale. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So anyways, in that moment, I asked if it was okay if I share. I asked for permission. And I offered this perspective. I said, you say you have this demon in your foot. What if this is actually like your awakening and this is energy in your foot? You're assuming it's a demon. What if you shift your perspective and say this is actually your own connection to your body? If you believe it's a demon, you'll experience it that way. You're actually giving your power away. And he kind of shifted and like stepped back and was like, oh my gosh, the demon's gone. And I'm thinking, I did nothing but offer a shift in perspective. It was just a really cool experience. And so, now the way that I view my work, now this is a little bit out there. So again, take this with a grain of salt, but I now view, this is my perspective shift, that every single patient is a version of me. We are all connected and we are all reflecting back to each other our own selves. So if I'm kind to a patient, I'm just being kind to myself. If I'm judging a patient, that literally will just come back to me in a different form. So I started to kind of catch myself, and if someone is yelling at me, a patient's yelling at me and I'm triggered, that's my own anger being reflected back to me. That's my own shadow. Or if someone's kind to me, that's my own kindness being reflected back to me. This really did amplify my experience at work because it made me more accountable, that I would catch myself if I was judging somebody or rolling my eyes. I'm like, oh, that's I'm just doing that to myself. And so really at the end, or like the bottom line of this slide was like, just basically saying our belief systems really do carry weight. My job did not actually change, but my relationship to my job changed. So for you as the audience, my challenge is, what is your relationship to your job? The patients we see are coworkers. It's not the actual patient or job. It is our relationship to these things that affect our quality of life. And I encourage you guys to pick a perspective that inspires you. So this next slide. This idea of asking better questions. So like the old Callie would be like, how do I get through the day? How do I finish my charting? What does this patient want from me? Why is this patient yelling at me? Why is this patient so weird? Versus, how can I experience more compassion and love for patients that walk through the door? How can I experience the fullness of my light today as a provider and healer? It doesn't have to be that woo-woo. It can be something as, how do I find joy and humor today? But our questions do create thought systems that affect the quality of our time at work. So this slide I titled, It's All in Our Intentions. So this is also from the teacher that I follow, but it's this idea of linking something super mundane, like brushing your teeth or turning on the car, with a very, very high vibe intention. So for example, what this guy encouraged me to do is I just picked this on my own, but now every single time I listen to patients' lungs, and I started this about like 6 to 8 months ago. I don't say this aloud, but I intention, may this being be free. Obviously, if I said it aloud, patients would think I'm super weird. But what I noticed was that this actually shifted my level of joy and difference at making at work. If we don't set intentions, we just get on autopilot. We close our charts, we like hand out antibiotics and we go home. But this started to become an anchor for me where I do not skip a beat, and every single lung I listen to, I intention this. And it helped me with basically taking the pressure off of my NPS score, that I had to have the perfect the perfect medical plan, be the perfect provider, save the patient kind of thing, that I could actually make a difference with something as simple as an intention when I'm listening to their lungs. And so just as the audience, I encourage you to pick something small, like even if you're looking in some patient's ear, may this being have a happy day. May this being get ice cream. It doesn't have to be anything super high vibe, but it's just, it's just something to pay attention to. And where is this? Hold on a second. And this reminds me too of this quote by this teacher where he said, we can't wait for the big moments before we step into big service. We have to bring service to the smallest moments, because there are no small opportunities. There's only the size of your service. So this is sort of, it's just an invitation into doing really small things. You don't have to give the perfect plan for a patient, although of course we strive to be good providers. It can be something as simple as listening to someone's lungs. By the way, my May All Beings Be Free. I don't know if you can see this, my water bottle, May All Beings Be Free. I have a little button right here on my little AFC jacket. You should see my bumper stickers, but it has lifted for me and shifted my quality of life at work for sure. Okay, so next slide. This one I titled Remember Everything is Energy. So I got this from my Reiki teacher. She was basically encouraging me to say, if you actually are annoyed or dislike someone, a politician, a coworker, a patient, we roll our eyes behind their back in their room, in room 6, and we're like, are you kidding me? And we like vent with the MA. I have done this. I am not perfect at this, but there's this idea that our words actually do affect the collective field. And so if I'm rolling my eyes at a patient, I'm doing it just to myself and to catch those moments, because it does come back to us. You know, even if we talk smack about Johnny behind his back, because we all do it, just kidding. But, you know, these things do come back to us energetically. You know, and so I have been there. I've had the patients that like have driven me crazy, and I'm venting with the MA. But catch yourself if you can, or if we're talking about another provider that has a quote unquote dumb plan that just comes back to us. So I just encourage you to catch yourself with that. Okay, this one, giving patients the permission to be. So this one is a really big one for me. I remember Yosef, he doesn't work here anymore. He's one of our providers that was with us. But he said to me one time, 80% of the time we are managing patients' anxiety. It's not even about the physical ailment or their cold. I mean, literally they're coming in and they're anxious about being anxious, or they're anxious about their cold that they just want to get ahead of, kind of thing. So this is sort of like a form of validation. And something that helped me was that I realized I don't have to agree. I don't have to like or dislike or accept a patient's perspective, but I can validate them. So it's the idea of like saying, it's okay to feel what you feel. I understand you feel down about this virus. You just want to get ahead of it. Like repeating back to them their words. This is so much of what patients want, more than the actual plan. And I know we're so busy. And so a lot of times we just have to turn and burn and get through these patients when we're seeing like 60 to 80 in a day. But when we can slow down and we have the time, I really, really, really encourage you to take that moment to just validate. A couple examples, I had a patient come in at U Hills that came in for UTI, and she was pregnant. And I had to like basically inform her of this. It was not planned. So when I told her she was pregnant, she kind of sat there and started to kind of be in shock, but had like tears in her eyes, but she wasn't saying anything. So at that moment I said, is it okay if I share something? She said yes. And I said, I just really encourage you, like right now, if you feel anger, rage, fear, you're scared, you're excited, you're sad, all of those things are okay and valid, and it is okay to feel all of those things at once. We're not taught to feel multiple feelings at once, you know. And then she burst into tears and she ended up hugging me, and it was this really beautiful human moment. And then she went about, you know, she went on her way. But those moments make me feel like I'm making a difference as a provider. Another example is I had a patient at Cherry Creek come in after a month of not being able to sleep because he witnessed his best friend shoot himself in the head. I mean, that is a big deal. And so of course he's in the room like shaking, you know, and we approached it medically. And then I said, is it okay if I share an idea? And I was saying to him, it's so important that you have resources to discharge this energy, like giving yourself permission and the grace to like punch a wall or scream or cry or rage. I feel like you're trying to be strong for your family, because he had 2 daughters. And again, he burst into tears and then he ended up hugging me. It was just, again, a very beautiful moment, all because I literally just gave him permission, or these patients permission, to feel what they feel. So just last point on this slide is what happens when we validate patients as opposed to here's a prescription and get out the door. It softens the demeanor between you and the patient. Patients feel more seen. It is one of the quickest ways to create a human connection in the very little time we have in an urgent care. And it expands the flow of the interaction between us and patients. Oh, last thing I'll say about that really quick, and I'm almost done here, is that when patients say, I can't get answers from my doctor, no one can diagnose me, the last doctor I saw just brushed me off. If you have the time, I would slow down and pay attention, because that's literally a patient's way of saying, I have not been validated, I have not been seen. And I know it's not always like our job to do that in urgent care, because it can be hard, but when you have the time, I highly encourage you to do that. Okay, creating safety. So this one is interesting. So this is my perspective, but I feel like one of the single most reasons like providers get sued or anything is because the patient doesn't feel seen and the patient doesn't feel safe. So this requires a lot of conscious intention to lack judgment. I am still working on this with my stepkids, but I want them to feel safe to tell me that they're, they have crushes on boys and girls, or they're, engaging in activity or whatever that I don't approve of, but I want them to feel safe to share this. So it's very much like a conscious vibration I feel like I want to create with patients, but a lot of it is lack of judgment. A lot of it is asking for consent. Is it okay if I share something? I know Dr. McGurran, I heard this, would always, before he does the physical exam, say, is it okay if I touch you? And it's very simple, but it's such a small thing that can create safety with the patient, or letting them participate in the interaction. Like, are you okay with this plan, these labs, this route? But these things create a very small little container of trust between you and the patient, which again is more meaningful and provides more value at work when you're working. Okay, last slide. So I know I put up here, I know this is a lot of psychological stuff. Like, I don't have studies where like 80% of people, don't feel seen when we do X, but, and this is obviously very hard to do in an urgent care setting, but when we have the time, I really do believe it's relevant. To go from like a year ago being cranky, annoyed, to now approaching my work as like, how can I be a light? How can I be a healer to a patient that walks through the door that is just reflecting me? That's sort of the way that I play this game now, and it's such a different game. Rick, our scribe, even said to me the other day, he's like, Callie, you're like a different person. I'm like, I know, but it's because I shifted the way that I view patients and work. I'm having more human moments, more meaningful interactions, and I can tell based on when I have the time, patients will literally ask me to be their primary. They reach out for hugs, and I'm more satisfied. And I'm more excited about the impact I'm making in these kind of small moments. To me, it's not about the prescription anymore. It's much more about making a difference in a patient's life beyond the medical condition, if I have the time. So final points. These are just ideas. View patients as yourself. The energy is just coming back to you. Change your perception or relationship to work. Ask better questions. Validate, acknowledge, and make patients feel safe. Give patients permission to be. And then pick something small to link with a very high vibe, positive intention at work, so it becomes an anchor for you. And then make human connections with patients when you have the time. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. I have one final thing. This is my little bowl. May all AFC beings and employees be free. All right, I'm done. Does anybody have any questions?
I immediately feel better about work.
Actually, my husband encouraged me to do the bowl. You should do the bowl, Callie. My husband's like, do the bowl, do the bowl. Anyways, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Callie. That was amazing.
That was wonderful.
And I might have cried, maybe.
Oh, yes, yes.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
No questions. I just think it was great. I mean, we've talked about, this stuff a lot, Callie, over time. And yeah, you really have changed a lot. Like I said, like just your demeanor and calmness and everything is really impressive. So awesome. Also, yes, Dr. McGurran asks every single patient every time, no matter what, is it okay if I touch you to do an exam? Also really cool. He doesn't miss it anytime. And patients really are like, oh, wow, yes, you can, actually. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, like, just something to add. It's really easy in this line of work, even though, like, yeah, we're not for the most part saving lives. It's not like high stakes, but I think it's really easy to get burnt out with like the volume that we see, and then you get that one bad review, whether it's like an NPS or Google review, that just like really leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And then I do this thing where I stop like trusting patients. So I'll get something like that. That's just like, I'm like, I remember that patient interaction, and the patient left with a smile on their face and then just stabbed me in the back, that kind of thing. And so I start going into rooms with like my guard up, and that's just no way to be, where you're just like sort of like not trusting your patients. And so I really like the fact that, Callie, you've like done this thing and use these sort of methods to sort of like, yeah, readjust your perspective. And a lot of that is like reducing burnout. And then another thing I'll say is that, like, I always have to remind myself that, so when I started at AFC about like 4 years ago or something, I came from the ED. And I mean, Dr. McGurran and Dr. Mazin could tell you, like, working in the ED, you got verbally abused every day, like multiple times a day. And, when I first started at AFC, I was like, I can't believe how reasonable our patients are. Like I felt like more than 9 out of 10 patients were like friendly, reasonable. I feel like they were kind of like me. And so I have to sort of like remind myself of that, just like that. Yeah, you do get the occasional entitled patient and, just a total a-hole, but like it's still not that common.
Yeah, Callie, really good talk. As you know, I'm a little woo-woo also, and there's a lot of validity to what you said. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. Energy is energy, and perspective is perspective on how you approach your patients. So, even if you're having a bad day, you can always walk in the room, smile, and really change someone's day and improve it by just kind of listening to them, reflecting with them, and giving them some advice and guidance. And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. I will add to this, where like I've been like Z, I've had patients like scream at me and yell, like we all have. I used to resist that, which of course, like I still have to have my boundaries and protect myself. But I have shifted into, in the moment, I'll be like, how is this an opportunity to love and hold space for this patient that's just me? Now, it's taken a long time, and I still have moments where I don't always do that. But I've shifted as an opportunity versus like, this sucks, get me out. How is this an opportunity? Like it really changed my mind. So it's really powerful stuff.
That's great.
I had a therapist that their saying was always look at the other side of the mirror. And in the moment, it would piss me off to be like, I don't want to look at the other side of the mirror. But usually if you do, you can see, oh, there's like, yeah, you can just turn it around, and it does work. Even though in the moment, sometimes you're like, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. I love you guys.
We love you too. Questions, comments? And back to what you were just talking about, like, my wife Rachel gave that presentation, I think it was like a month ago, where it's like, I guess that's another way of like changing your perspective is, if a patient is being, inappropriate, totally out of line, either like non-compliant or like angry, yelling, ask yourself like, instead of what's wrong with you, ask what happened to you, right? So like, what is it about the person that, is causing them to behave that way? What happened to them? Maybe they're afraid, maybe they feel vulnerable, that kind of thing, because of prior trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to add to that, I think Katie and Mike too, this would be also something relevant for the staff to also be aware of. I mean, obviously, they're not providers, but they're still healthcare, providers in a way. So something for them to also remind themselves as well.
Yeah, I think this would be a really good recording for them to watch.
I agree. We will pass that along to the staff as well.
Can I say something? Because when I first started, I followed Stu, and he did something that I thought was amazing. And this goes along with the validation thing. And he thanked the people for coming in. And I was amazed at how great of a response everyone has to that. And I do that to everyone now. I really took that away from him. And I say, I'm glad you came in. Thank you for coming. And everyone, I get a smile from 97% of people, unless they're like really feel like they're a train wreck. But it is amazing how many people really, really love that. And thank you, Stu, for showing me that.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
It makes a big difference. Really does.
That's great. All right. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you, Callie. That was really, really good. That was very helpful. Appreciate
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Callie.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.